When Mei Lin invited me to this, I said I felt like I would be crashing somebody else's wedding, and but it's all been very hospitable, and I know some things about the bride that I can reveal now. That so talk about Xerox must compare to the openness of this basically university set loose with the Defense Department's money. That was the genesis of the TCP IP. Working in Xerox, as John did, must have felt like an alternate universe, and working at IBM was like being in the dark star. I mean, if you picture, and I'm sure some of the venture capitalists in the audience may be picturing it, a combination of Apple, Microsoft, and Google, you get an idea what IBM was in the tech industry in the late 60s and 70s. Plus, beside being naturally possessive and secretive, it was under a consent decree preventing them from letting any information about unannounced products get out into the world. So in this environment, I went to work in an IBM scientific center, ready to share my genius with the rest of the community, and found myself in a room with an IBM virtual machine system, told to develop a document management system. And the requirements were that we have the ability to search a database. The term database kind of hardly existed in 1969, but to search a library of documents in machine-readable form, to be able to use the information thereby gleaned to write a report or other document, and then to be able to format and, in effect, typeset the document, because that was a requirement in the printed world, and for many kinds of the documents that IBM customers dealt with. And of course, we had nothing in the computer realm, even at IBM, that could even produce two typefaces on the same machine. So it was an interesting project, and I looked around for an IBM product that could do those three things: the information retrieval, the word processing, and then the typography. And there weren't any. But I found three separate products, each of them running in a different operating system. And I was told that that wouldn't be a problem because we had this VM360 system that had been invented at the Cambridge Scientific Center where I was working. All you had to do is plug one of those products and its operating system into each of three different virtual machines. The machines can pass their files to one another, and everything is solved. So they didn't tell me that one of the applications that I had to make work in one of those virtual machines was a component of something called the General Information System, which was about 100,000 lines of 360 assembler code, most of them without any comments whatsoever. So I yanked the, so I yanked the document retrieval part out of that, put it into a virtual machine, got the typesetting program put into another virtual machine, and a text editing program in a third virtual machine. And sure enough, it was easy to get the files from one machine to the other, But when they got there, not one of the programs could use the files that the other programs were using. And that's because each of these programs had to have embedded within the actual content of the documents they worked on specialized commands telling the program what to do. That still happens today, only with graphical user interfaces we don't get to see the commands, but they're there. And so we had the situation where the information retrieval system, which had codes stating the relevance of different parts of the document so as to help get more precise retrieval, those were totally different from the codes in the typesetting program, which said how you wanted the document to look, what font it should be in, and so on. So we had to be able to come up with a way of representing those documents so that they could be interchanged between those three applications, even though they were all residing in the same computer system. And what we came up with was the notion that if the typesetting program wants to make this piece of the document in 14-point type, and the retrieval program thinks this part of the document is really, really important, then there's something that must be in common about that part of the document that caused those desires to be expressed in the different programs. And for example, that piece was probably the title of the document, so you want to print it in large type. It's very significant from the standpoint of information retrieval. So we came up with a scheme which we called generalized markup, as opposed to the process-specific markup of the individual application programs. And that scheme involved just coding the pieces of the document to describe their inherent characteristics. And all of this was even more complicated than the way it sounds this quickly, but we succeeded in devising such a scheme and at the same time inventing the computerized style sheet, because we had to have another document for each of the applications telling it what to do when it found a title or a heading or an ordered list or an unordered list. And this generalized markup language freed the information from the things that were going to be done with it, from the system from which it had originally come, and it basically became an open source for data, where before all documents and most other data was created by a program, processed by that program, and a report generated, and then it all went away.